You walk into the room and instantly feel it. The tension, the shift. Your partner's mood has dropped, and without thinking, you're already adjusting, scanning their face, reading their body language, calculating what you need to say or do to bring the temperature back up. You do this so automatically that you don't even notice you're doing it anymore. But here's what nobody tells you about being the emotional thermostat in your relationships. It's slowly destroying you from the inside out. Think about an actual thermostat in your house. It doesn't just measure the temperature, it controls it. When things get too cold, it kicks on the heat. When things get too hot, it cools everything down. It's constantly working, constantly adjusting, constantly regulating to keep everything comfortable. Now imagine being that in your relationship. You're not just noticing when your partner is upset, angry, sad, or stressed. You're the one responsible for fixing it, for managing it, for bringing things back to normal. You've then become the person who regulates everyone else's emotional climate while your own temperature doesn't even get checked. And the worst part? You probably don't even realize how much energy this is costing you. Because when you've been doing this your whole life, it just feels normal. But normal doesn't mean healthy. Let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in real life. Your partner comes home from work in a bad mood. Before they even speak, you're already in motion. You've dimmed the lights, you're being extra quiet. You're thinking about what to make for dinner that might cheer them up. You're tiptoeing around the house like you're diffusing a bomb. Because in your mind, their bad mood is somehow your responsibility to fix, or maybe it shows up differently. You're out with friends having a good time, and you notice one person seems a little off. Suddenly, you can't enjoy yourself anymore. You're focused entirely on them, asking if they're okay, trying to draw them into conversation, doing everything you can to lift their spirits because you physically cannot. Relax when someone around you is uncomfortable. Here's the thing. This might sound like you're just being caring, just being a good partner or a good friend. And on the surface, yeah, it looks like that. People probably praise you for it. They probably call you thoughtful, considerate, sensitive to others. But underneath all of that, there's something much darker happening. You're not just being kind, you're surviving. You learned a long time ago that your safety, your worth, your value depends on keeping other people happy. And that's not love. That's a coping mechanism that you developed when you were too young to know any better. Being the thermostat means you're constantly monitoring everyone else's emotional state while completely ignoring your own. You walk into rooms and immediately sense the vibe. Is everyone okay? Is there tension? Do I need to say something funny to lighten the mood? Do I need to stay quiet? Your nervous system is in a constant state of alert, scanning for threats, trying to predict what everyone needs so you can provide it before they even ask. And the exhausting part? You do this all day, every day, in every relationship you have. With your partner, your family, your friends, your coworkers. You're regulating everyone's temperature except your own. So where does this pattern start? Because I promise you, nobody is born this way. You weren't born anxious about other people's moods. You weren't born feeling responsible for everyone else's emotions. This is something you learned. Something you had to learn to survive. For most people who become emotional thermostats, the pattern starts in childhood. Maybe you grew up with a parent who had unpredictable moods. One day they were fine, the next day they were angry or sad or distant, and you never knew which version you were going to get, so you learned to read them. You became an expert at detecting the smallest shift in their tone, their facial expression, their energy. Because if you could catch it early enough, maybe you could prevent the explosion. Maybe you could keep things calm. Or maybe you had a parent who was dealing with addiction, mental illness, or just couldn't handle their own emotions. And without anyone telling you to, you stepped into the role of caretaker. You became the one who made sure everyone was okay. You became the peacekeeper, the therapist, the emotional manager of the entire household. Psychologists call this parentification. It's when a child is forced to take on adult emotional responsibilities way before they're ready. And it doesn't just happen in extreme situations. It can happen in families that look perfectly normal from the outside. When you're a kid and your emotional safety depends on someone else's mood, You develop something called hypervigilance. Your brain learns to constantly scan for danger, and in your case, danger wasn't a physical threat. It was emotional instability. It was your parents' anger or sadness or withdrawal. So you learn to manage it. You learn that if you could just keep them happy, you'd be safe. If you could just regulate their emotions, you wouldn't have to feel so scared. This becomes hardwired into your nervous system. Even decades later, even when you're safe, even when you're with people who aren't dangerous, your body is still doing the same thing. Still scanning. Still adjusting. Still trying to control the temperature of every room you walk into. And here's the really messed up part. People rewarded you for this. Teachers called you mature. Family members said you were so responsible, so grown up. Everyone loved how you never caused problems, how you always knew what to say, how you could handle anything. But nobody ever stopped to ask what this was costing you. Nobody asked if you were okay, because you were too busy making sure everyone else was okay. So you learned to bury your own needs, your own feelings, your own pain. You learned that your job wasn't to have emotions. Your job was to manage everyone else's. Fast forward to adulthood, and that pattern is still running your life. Except now it's not just with your parents. It's with everyone. Your romantic partner becomes the person whose mood you're constantly managing. You can tell within seconds of seeing them whether they're upset. And when they are, you immediately shift into fix-it mode. You start problem solving. You start caretaking. You ask what's wrong 100 different ways. You offer solutions they didn't ask for. You do everything in your power to bring them back to baseline because their discomfort is physically painful for you to witness. In friendships, you're always the therapist, the one everyone calls when they're going through something. And you're happy to help, right? Except you notice that you're always the one listening, rarely the one being heard. You're always supporting others through their problems while your own stuff stays buried. And on the rare occasions you do try to open up, it feels wrong. It feels selfish. Like you're taking up space you don't deserve. This is codependency. Not in the casual way people throw that word around, but in the actual psychological sense. It's when your sense of worth becomes completely tied to your ability to take care of others. When being needed feels like the only proof that you matter. When you'd rather burn yourself out than risk someone being upset with you. Your boundaries are basically non-existent. Because how can you set boundaries when you've been trained to believe that other people's needs are more important than yours? Saying no feels impossible. It feels cruel. It feels like you're failing at your job, which is to keep everyone comfortable and happy. So you say yes to things you don't want to do. You tolerate behavior that hurts you. You put up with dynamics that drain you, all because the idea of someone being disappointed in you is more terrifying than your own exhaustion. And the thing about being the thermostat is that you so focused on everyone else that completely lost touch with your own emotional temperature. Someone asks how you're doing and you genuinely don't know, because you've spent so long ignoring your own feelings that you can't even access them anymore. You might feel numb during moments that should be happy. You might struggle to relax even when everything is fine. You might feel resentful toward the people you love without understanding why. That's because you're running on empty. You've been regulating everyone else's emotions for so long that you have nothing left for yourself. And worst of all, the people around you might not even realize how much you're doing. Because you make it look easy. You make it look natural. They don't see the mental gymnastics you're doing behind the scenes. They don't see how much energy it takes to constantly monitor and adjust and manage. They just see someone who seems to have it all together. Someone who never needs anything. Someone who's always fine, but eventually something breaks. Maybe it's a moment where you realize that you've spent years taking care of someone who has never once asked if you were okay. Maybe it's the exhaustion that finally catches up with you and you can't get out of bed. Maybe it's a relationship where you gave everything and it still wasn't enough. Whatever it is, there's usually a moment where the whole system collapses. Or you can't do it anymore. Where you realize that this pattern that saved you as a child is now slowly killing you as an adult. And that realization is brutal. Because it means admitting that the thing you've built your entire identity around, the thing that made you feel valuable, the thing that kept you safe, is actually the thing that's been hurting you all along. It means looking at your relationships and realizing that some of them only exist because you were willing to be the thermostat. That if you stopped managing everyone's emotions, some people might actually leave. And that's terrifying. But it's also the truth that will set you free. The breaking point often looks like this. You're exhausted, but you can't pinpoint why. You're successful, you're accomplished, people rely on you, but you feel hollow inside. You're giving and giving and giving, but you never feel full. You're managing everyone else's emotional climate, but your own inner world feels like chaos. And you start to wonder, is this really what the rest of my life is going to look like? Am I going to spend every single day scanning other people's faces, adjusting my behavior, making myself smaller so others can be comfortable? That question, as painful as it is actually the beginning of healing. Here's the truth that's hard to hear but necessary to accept. You cannot heal this pattern while still performing it. You cannot learn to stop being the thermostat while simultaneously trying to control everyone's emotional temperature. You have to be willing to let things get uncomfortable. You have to be willing to let people be upset without fixing it. You have to be willing to sit in the tension and not immediately smooth it over. And that's going to feel awful at first. Your nervous system is going to scream at you that you're doing something wrong, that you need to step in, that you need to make it better. But you have to learn to sit with that discomfort, because that discomfort is not danger. It's just unfamiliar. Setting boundaries is going to feel like the hardest thing you've ever done. Saying no is going to trigger guilt that feels unbearable. But boundaries aren't mean. They're not selfish. They're how you communicate to the world that you have needs too. That your emotional state matters just as much as everyone else's. Start small. If someone asks you to do something and your immediate internal response is dread, that's your body telling you something. Honor that, say no. Or say, let me think about it and get back to you. Give yourself permission to check in with your own temperature before you agree to regulate someone else's. You also need to start practicing what therapists call emotional detachment. Not in a cold way, but in a healthy way. Someone else's bad mood is not your emergency. Your partner's stress from work is not yours to fix. Your friend's relationship problems are not your responsibility to solve. You can care about people without carrying their emotions for them. You can be supportive without being a thermostat. This means learning to sit with people in their discomfort instead of trying to pull them out of it. It means saying things like, that sounds really hard, instead of, here's what you should do. It means being present without being a problem solver. And here's the most important part. You need to start paying attention to your own emotional temperature. Checking with yourself multiple times a day. How am I actually feeling right now? Not how should I be feeling, not how everyone else needs me to feel, but how do I actually feel? You might not know the answer at first. That's okay. You're learning a skill that was taken from you a long time ago. Start naming your emotions, even if it's just in your head. I'm tired, I'm frustrated, I'm sad. I'm anxious. Just acknowledging them is a radical act when you've spent your whole life ignoring them. Therapy can be incredibly helpful here, especially with someone who understands trauma and attachment. Because this pattern isn't just a bad habit, it's a trauma response. It's your nervous system doing what it learned to do to keep you safe. You're going to need support as you unlearn it. You're going to need someone who can witness your pain, validate your experience, and help you build new patterns. You might also need to grieve. Grieve the childhood where you had to be the adult. Grieve the relationships where you gave everything and got nothing back. Grieve the version of yourself who believed that your worth was measured by how well you could manage other people's emotions. That grief is not weakness. It's proof that you're healing. And slowly, very slowly, you'll start to notice changes. You'll notice that you can be in a room with someone who's upset and not immediately feel responsible for fixing it. You'll notice that you can say no without the world ending. You'll notice that some relationships shift or even end, and while that's painful, it's also clarifying. The people who only wanted you because you were willing to be their thermostat will fade away. And the people who actually see you, who value you for who you are and not what you do for them, those people will stay. You'll start to discover who you are when you're not performing, when you're not scanning, When you're not adjusting, you'll find hobbies you actually enjoy instead of hobbies that make you useful to others. You'll have opinions that are yours and not just mirrors of what other people want to hear. You'll feel your feelings instead of just managing everyone else's. And here's what nobody tells you about stepping down from the thermostat role. It's not just about stopping bad patterns. It's about discovering that you were never just valuable because of what you could do for others. You were always valuable just for existing. You were always worthy of care, of rest, of having your own needs met. You just couldn't see it because you were too busy keeping everyone else comfortable. The work of healing from this pattern is not easy. It's going to bring up every fear you've ever had about being abandoned, being too much, being not enough, being unlovable. But on the other side of that fear is a version of you who doesn't spend every waking moment anxiously monitoring other people's emotional states. A version of you who can relax, who can trust, who can receive care instead of just giving it. A version of you who knows that your worth isn't tied to your ability to keep everyone else happy. And that version of you, that version has been waiting for you to come back and finally let them breathe. Subscribe for more psychology content that actually helps you heal.